it's great to be here. I'm sure some of you were at the panel yesterday where we had a very interesting discussion about the role of music in film. What I'm going to do is talk about the idea of collaboration. It's something that all musicians really from the start of their playing careers know about, because when you play with people, when you play music with people, you are adapting to what they do as well as putting your own input into it. And that goes all the way through a music career. If you're writing for an artist, you take into account what they do and what they sound like. I would never write for Tina Turner the way I wrote for Rod Stewart, or I would never play saxophone with Prince the way I played with Van Morrison. It's really understanding the nature of collaboration. However, it seems that when composers or when people become media writers, they get very precious about what they've written, and they tend not to take much notice of people who aren't musical. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I've seen it many times through my career, that directors, producers, editors are scared of talking about music if they don't know the technical terms, and composers are very, I wouldn't say snooty, but they are very precious about what they write. And quite often when I was conducting for other composers, I've seen composers say, well, this is what I've written, if you don't like it, tough. And it's not the attitude at all to go in with. One has to remember that a director might lose his favorite shot, an editor might lose his favorite edit, a screenwriter might lose the line he considers the best. So musicians shouldn't be too precious about what they do and how they do it. What I've done today is pull together a series of collaborations, different types of collaboration and their outcome. And I'm going to show clips that illustrate exactly what I'm talking about. The first clip I'm going to show is a commercial. It's a 7-minute commercial that I did for Prada, and it was made for cinema, directed by Ridley Scott and his daughter Jordan. I've actually composed most of the music for Ridley Scott's commercials over the years, and he still does them. People probably aren't aware outside the business that he continues to do commercials even while he's making these blockbuster movies like Gladiator and, well, everything really, his whole career. But when he called me, I was in Los Angeles, I was working in Los Angeles, and he said, I've got this film, it's for Prada, it's very stylish, quite mysterious, it lasts for 6 or 7 minutes. We have no idea what the music should be. I think it probably should be sophisticated, maybe slightly jazzy, or, you know, with a hint of mystery. There's a whole dance sequence in the middle where it could go into something a bit more rhythmic. And it's got to keep the interest for the whole time. What I'm going to do is show about a minute of it without any sound, if we can. It's number 17 in my list. And if we run about a minute without any sound, you'll see exactly what I saw when it was given to me as a cut. So remember, there were no hints of what the music should be at all, nothing, apart from maybe something a bit sophisticated. have a look at the visuals, and then immediately after that, we'll play it with the soundtrack that I composed. Okay, you get the idea. There's not many clues there as to what it's going to say, what it's doing. Even with the music, it's quite a sort of mysterious film, but hopefully the music will carry it along, and that's the idea. So if we now play it with the soundtrack, you'll see what my response was and how I responded to the collaboration that we have.
For I am the first and the last. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am she whose wedding is great, and I have not taken a husband. I am the bride and the bridegroom. I am senseless, and I am wise. Come forward to childhood and do not despise it, because it is small and it is little. And do not turn away greatnesses and some parts from the smallnesses, for the smallnesses are known from the greatnesses. I am the one who is honored and who is praised. I am knowledge and ignorance. I am shame and boldness. I am shameless. I am ashamed. I am control and uncontrollable. I am strength and I am fear. I am war and peace. I am the substance and the one who has no substance. But I am compassionate and I am cruel. Do not hate my obedience and do not love my self-control. I am the union and the disillusion. I am she who exists in all fears and strength in trembling. I am she who is weak, and I am well in a pleasant place. And I am an alien and a citizen. I am the silence that is incomprehensible, and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. I am the voice whose sound is manifold, for I am the first and the last.
Thank you. So that's an interesting one. None of that, although you may think it is improvised. It's all written out. So everything that the trumpet's playing, everything that the percussion's doing, the only thing that is improvised in it is the percussionist Tiki Pasillas, who plays with Arturo Sandoval, doing the vocal percussion in the middle after the salsa dance. So that's an interesting one. Another collaboration with Ridley is a film for which I won an Emmy. It's a film called RKO 281, about the making of Citizen Kane. And the interesting thing about this is that Ridley Scott produced it, and Ben Ross directed it for HBO. And Ben Ross said, the music should have a quality of film noir. And HBO said, we do not want film noir. And Ridley Scott said, the music should have a quality of not film noir, but something else. And this is basically the direction I got. A week before the recording sessions, I kidnapped the director and said, you're not leaving my house until we've decided what the music should be. And Ben is pretty musical, so he instanced a few classical pieces. And I said, do you know, the interesting thing about what you've said is they're all in 3/4, waltz time. I've written a little waltz for a letter reading sequence in the middle of the film. And I played it to him, and he went, that's the score. And I'm now going to show you the opening titles, which I'll cut off, which is 14B. These are the main titles from the film, but this is exactly what I'm referring to. This would not have happened had we not all got together and talked about what the music should be, with all the disagreements that went on as well. It's quite amazing that anything got through in the end, to be honest, but these are the opening titles with the waltz that I wrote.
We open on Monument Valley. Towering stalagmites reaching towards heaven. We track in on a single solitary figure. A quiet man.
Come here.
A lonely man.
What did I tell you? I told you.
Who is he?
I wanted factual, but I want cold. I don't want a hot sound. No vibrato. No vibrato.
You want to do the life of Christ?
You have to admit it has a built-in audience, Craig. We shoot it like a Western, vibrant, stark, modern. All on location in the Mojave Desert.
Hey, Greg, kid. His next picture, he wants to play Christ.
Yeah, I hope he's planning to start with the crucifixion. You read Luella?
I am trying to work.
Sorry, Bernie. We'll take it outside. Sounds wonderful. So, what am I today? A puny upstart or a spoiled dilettante? I wouldn't be that. She probably can't spell dilettante.
And how is the country to feel when this industry continues to employ bedraggled foreigners and swarthy refugees instead of real Americans? Doesn't Hollywood know there's a depression on? Don't real Americans deserve work?
Well, at least she's off cane.
Off cane? Orson, this is code language to the studio bosses, bedraggled foreigners and swarthy refugees. Now, who the hell do you think that could be?
I don't know. Peter Lorre?
Who owns this town? Who runs every studio? Jews.
Okay, they're Jews. So what? They're Jews, man, just like you.
Just listen, you idiot. This is just the first shot. The next time she will actually use the J word, and the studio bosses will do anything to keep that word from going into print. And Hearst knows it.
What are they gonna do, Mank? Are they gonna kill me? Is that what you think?
Why don't you ask Thomas Ince that question?
Sorry, Mr. Wells, we need to be able to hear.
Orson, he knows. Do you understand what that means? That he knows? He knows.
What are you so afraid of, Mank? It's done. It's in the can. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, and it will stay in the can. That film will never come out. Hearst will not allow it. The studio heads will not allow it. That film will never see the light of day.
Are you on their side, Mank? What? That's what it sounds like to me. Are you on their side? I mean, for Christ's sakes, you wrote the goddamn script. You fought for the credit.
That's right, and I told you that this would happen. Didn't I tell you? Huh? Right, listen, I got my check, you got yours. Let's move on.
I will not move on! Who are they, Mank? Who are these men that you're so afraid of? Who are these tiny little fucking men? They're accountants.
We're ready. You want to hear it?
That's actually not the sequence I wanted to play, but it's interesting. We're recreating the music from Citizen Kane, which is the beginning and the end, and in the middle is my score, not the waltz, but another part of my score. So the transition was seamless. When I turned up, because I had to coach the actor playing the conductor, I stood off camera going like this, and he tried to follow me, not very successfully. But the extras booked to be the orchestra, all the violin players were real violin players. All the brass players and woodwind players were extras who'd never held an instrument in their lives. So I had to do some juggling about to make it look like they were proper players. You know, I told the French horn players how to sit when they weren't playing and things like that. But it worked very convincingly. And of course, John Malkovich and Liev Schreiber were absolutely wonderful in the film. It's worth seeing if you get the chance. RKO 281. I want to jump now to another movie where I was called in. I was the conductor, arranger, and orchestrator of a film called Leon, which in America was called The Professional, directed by Luc Besson with Gary Oldman and a very young Natalie Portman and Jean Reno. And the producers were relaunching the James Bond franchise with a film Goldeneye. So they hired myself and Eric Serra, the composer, to do the score. Unfortunately, Eric, being a very young French composer, was very precious and sort of walked out of meetings when somebody criticized something that he'd done. So on the Friday before the film came out, they rang me and said, we're stuck on the big tank chase. We don't like the track that's been done. Could you do something else? So I went down, and this was slightly different because I said, you don't need to brief me. I know what you want. You want James Bond with, some extra bits, if you like. And I went away, I took the film away. I wrote this on Saturday. I orchestrated it on Sunday. It was copied on Monday, recorded on Tuesday, dubbed on Wednesday, and the film came out the following Friday. So we're going to look at this sequence that basically took me a day to sort of come up with, and it's number 13A.
That's what it's for. Назад!
Com- complete nonsense, of course. Interestingly, when that's in the cinema, obviously it's in surround sound, so the music cuts through a lot more than it does off this, which is just everything meshed together, if you like. But I also worked on, and this is another example of collaboration, the last James Bond film, No Time to Die, and I got a phone call from Hans Zimmer saying, would I consider writing the brass for the film? And this is very interesting because Hans wrote the basic rhythm track, and then I came in and added the brass to it and conducted it. So we're going to play like about a minute from No Time to Die, but this is a different sort of collaboration between 2 or 3 different composers, which is unusual in film. Usually, if you're hired to do a movie, you're the composer. But I guess on this, there was such high pressure and time constraints, and Hans probably didn't feel comfortable adding the sort of the jazzier elements to the score. So you're going to hear a once-in-a-lifetime, if you like, collaboration between Hans Zimmer and myself. And this is number 18. It's the scene, if you've seen the movie, where there's a big sort of fight sequence in Cuba. And therefore, there's a lot of Cuban elements, including Arturo Sandoval, in the mix. So we're going to just play a little snippet from that. This is number 18. It's just the music, so. I was just getting into that. That's a shame. Yeah, that's, as I say, that's from No Time to Die. I'm going to talk a bit, we talked yesterday, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Titanic, which somehow turned out to be probably the biggest movie ever made, and probably will always be that. I came, I hate to say on board, but it's probably not the right thing to say, but I was hired, let's say that, to write all the music for the ship's orchestra. So it was basically an arranging job, but I was sent the White Star Line playlist, and James Cameron said, do whatever you like. Just pick whatever you want. I took, I think, about 5 or 6 classical pieces that I wrote, reductions for the salon orchestra that would have been on board the ship. Then I did some Broadway hits of the time that were so obscure we had to go into the Library of Congress to get sheet music for them. And Alexander's Ragtime Band, which, interestingly, the survivors of the Titanic remembered what the band were playing, because that was all they could hear when they were on the water. They could still hear the sound of the band on deck. Coming to the band on deck, people often ask me, it's probably the scene that everyone remembers in the film when the band stops and plays "Nearer My God to Thee" on deck. And the way this came about, this is great collaborative pre-planning. I was in London. I was offered the part of Wallace Hartley, the ship's orchestra leader, but I don't play the violin, so forget it. And I couldn't spare 2 weeks in Mexico. My friend took the gig. He was there for 2 years, and he was stuck. They wouldn't let him anywhere apart from on set. So 2 years just in the little enclave where they were filming. But I went to bed in London at about midnight. I woke up at 8:30, and there were 10 messages on my answer machine. I thought, that's very odd, because there was nothing there when I went to bed. So I played them, and the first few were, "This is James Cameron's assistant. Would you call me in Mexico?" The next few were, "This is the producer of Titanic. Would you call me?" And the last message was, "James Cameron, call me now." So I rang this Mexico number. I got through to James, and he said, I said, "Hello, James." He said, "Nearer My God to Thee, how does it go?" I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "How does it go?" And I've just got out of bed. I haven't had my morning tea or anything. So I went, nearer. He said, "Stop." Okay. Again, I went, "Nearer." And he put a megaphone to the phone. And what happened was he decided to film it live. And the band, who are actually the band who recorded the music, said, "We don't know it, and we haven't got any music for it." So they waited the whole night, I imagine with everybody swimming around in the water, waiting for me to wake up, because apparently I'm the only person who would know how it went. And I sang it over the phone to Mexico while the violinist wrote it down. And that is the big scene in the film that everyone says, "Oh, that must have taken years of planning to do that." That was the years of planning, me singing on a mobile phone. But the interesting thing about that was I got carte blanche from James. I just gave him what I thought was appropriate. He used it all, which was fantastic. Another movie I should talk about is Monty Python's Life of Brian, where we didn't have an ending for the film. And this is another example of the collaborative technique at work. Those of you who've seen the film, it's a wonderful comedy. It still stands up today. But for the end sequence, they were going to free Brian from the cross. They were going to let him go. They were going to fade into the sunset. No idea. Nobody knew. And Eric Idle said, "Well, I think we should have a song." So he wrote a little song, and he sent it to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, it might be fun to do this as a sort of 1930s pastiche, Busby Berkeley." He went, "That's a very good idea." And he took it to the others, and they were, to be honest, very underwhelmed. They were, "Well, it's all right. It's not great. Okay, we'll try it." And I rang Terry Jones, the director, and said, "How much do you need for the filming?" And he said, "About 20 seconds. So, I rang Eric and said he wants 20 seconds. Eric's answer was unprintable. But we recorded the whole thing, and Eric went off to Tunisia. I did the whistling, I conducted, I wrote the arrangement, and somehow this little ditty that most of them were still, ambivalent about, well, it's all right, I guess, become a sort of an international anthem. So we're going to have a look at it in its original state, and the loudest whistle is me, I'm afraid. So we're going to step back 46 years. I can't believe it, but it is 46 years ago. and we're at number 4, etc. It's very funny. George Harrison of the Beatles produced the original record, and I thought people would get bored with the whistling all the way through, so I wrote a little Hollywood-type counter melody, which he loved, and he insisted that they take the whistle out for that bit. But whenever I met him after that, he wouldn't say hello. He would sing me my string line. So I'd go, "Hi, George," and he'd go, "Da-da-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da," which was lovely, it's sort of a nice touch. And to be, associated with the Beatle was quite wonderful. He also was involved in the thing I did, a spoof on the Beatles called The Ruttles, which is very funny if you ever get a chance to catch it. But interestingly, every movie I've worked on, I've had to basically, and record, you're not just writing for yourself. When you write library music, production music, you just write. When you're doing a film, when you're doing a commercial, for example, you just have to take into account what people want. And it's very simple. It guides you. I'll quickly play a couple of commercials just to illustrate. First one is for Addis brushes. The idea they came to me with was they were going to use, it was the first time they've managed to use Tom and Jerry in a commercial. And they wanted music that sounded authentically as if it came from a 1940s Tom and Jerry film. So what we did was I recorded the whole thing on 2 microphones, played it back in the studio on the speaker, and recorded the speaker. So what you hear is actually a speaker mix of 2 microphones in an orchestral studio, trying to recapture the sound of 1940s Hollywood. So this is number 15. You probably couldn't get away with that now, would you? You sort of health and safety would say, "Oh no, you can't have that. Oh no, you can't hurt the cat." But that was an example. This is another one that really dates it. In the days of the early days of stereo television, the agency came to me and said, "What we want to do is to have a commercial where there's somehow a stereo film, but one side of the stereo isn't playing because the people who own the television have a mono TV." This was for Radio Rentals, which in those days rented televisions. I mean, it's a historical document now, as they say. But this is what I came up with to really put that across with the fact that if you were playing a stereo film in mono, it wasn't going to work. And from that, they wrote the script that you'll see here. So I sort of, it was in the air as one of the ideas, but I said, well, this is the best idea that will make that work. So we're going to have a look at this. This won the Clio and the Golden Lion at the Cannes Advertising Festival. It's for radio rentals, and it is number 15A.
Hold it! Hold it!
One speaker? This movie's in stereo, buddy.
Stereo?
Should have gone to radio rentals.
I only bought the video last year.
If you'd rented, you could have changed it for the latest stereo video. Okay, guys, let's make it mono.
Radio rentals. Videos you'll be glued to, not stuck with.
It's quite a fun commercial, I think. Are we at a time for questions, or are there more examples that you want to see? I'm not sure. I need guidance. More examples. More examples. Okay. Well, we'll talk about records, I guess. Yeah. So, extending that collaborative idea, this is one occasion where what I did inspired how the film was made. This is a record I did with Björk called It's Oh So Quiet, with my big band. And the director, Spike Jonze, took the music and made the video subsequent to us recording the track. So if we have a look at this, it is number 11.
It's oh so quiet. Shh, shh. It's oh so still. Shh, shh. You're all alone. Shh, shh. And so peaceful until you fall in love. Simple, the sky up above. Simple is caving in. Wow, wow! You never been so nuts about a guy you wanna love. You wanna cry, you cross your heart and hope to die.
So that's the great thing about making records for me and having videos made was that some of them were, well, most of them were absolutely wonderful. I'm going to show another one quickly. This is for a record that I arranged for the incredible combination of Tina Turner and Barry White. And the film was made by somebody I did a lot of commercials with, Nick Park, who made Wallace and Gromit. And they, in fact, have a cameo in the film. The backstory to this, which is interesting, was that Barry White, who was managed by the same manager that managed me, which was an odd combination, he managed Barry White, Richard Pryor, and me. Spot the odd one out, you know. Barry White saw himself as a very thin sex symbol, which he was a sex symbol, but he wasn't exactly thin. And he put out an injunction to ban the film. So what probably would have been a #1 record, crept into the bottom half of the charts, and much to Tina Turner's disgust, never had the recognition it probably deserved. But she rescued the film, and when Barry passed away, she put it out. And she told me that she'd sort of made a point of not having it destroyed, although she told Barry White that it had been destroyed. So sorry about that. We'll have a quick look at a bit of that, which is number 12. That's a fun film. Again, if you go on Tina Turner's website, you'll see the whole thing and the whole story of that. Just wondering what else. Yeah, why not? It was my saxophone playing was mentioned. So when I joined Van Morrison, he asked me to rewrite all his arrangements and bring them up to date. Well, we're talking about 1978, so up to date 1978. So again, it's the same story. You know, you're mindful of who the performer is and how they sound, what they do, and you structure what you write accordingly. So in this clip, it's very short. I've just cobbled together a little bit from one of our Irish concerts in 1979, and I'm the guy in the suit playing the alto saxophone with the hair. This is 3A. There we go. Are there questions? Any questions? I'm sure there are. Yes, I see one.
My question is, how are the other creators within the series or a film who are not musicians? You talked about it in the beginning. How do we talk to you? Because I really find it difficult. What's the common language?
The common language, to be honest with you, is, I always say, and this is where I did an English degree, so I was very conscious of imagery, structure, making the music another character. So I would always say, just tell me what you feel, not musically, just what you feel. I did one movie, and the director said to me, it was set in the war, and it was very moving, and I wrote something that was very moving, I thought. And the director said, "You're inside the film. I want you to be outside the film." And I knew exactly what he meant. And I wrote that, which I interpreted correctly as he wanted me to go against what was on the screen, not with it. So through the years of doing commercials and drama, what I found is that the best thing is to articulate exactly what the emotional feelings are. Nothing to do with, B flats or anything like that. And if you talk with language like that, a lot of composers will feel uncomfortable because they won't know how to interpret that. But a really good film composer, I've always found, understands that perfectly and can interpret it. And I mean, I had things like, when I was particularly in advertising, you know, could it be slower but faster? Or can you write something that's quieter but louder? Incredible. Or could it be more green? Or that doesn't sound like a tomato. You know, it's very interesting because you have to interpret these things, because at the end of the day, these are the people who are going to turn around and say, look, you're not getting what we want. So you have to be flexible, and you have to appreciate that not everybody is going to come in knowing musical terms and, oh, you know, you've written a tritone there. I'm not sure we want that. You know, it's very rare that you'll get people like that. And quite often, that's more tricky than people who have no musical knowledge at all, because then you're dealing with someone who either knows a lot or thinks they know a lot. So it's a very interesting balance. But I always try. Somebody said to me, actually another composer who I won't name, is what is the most important voice in the room? It was an interesting thought, you know, because in the old days, it used to be me, a director, and an editor, and that was it. Now there are focus groups, producers, all kinds, you know, demos are required. None of these things that you've heard did I demo. They've all gone straight to film. So there's a big risk factor, because you're doing things and you're thinking, right, they've trusted me thus far. Are they going to appreciate what I've done now? And thankfully, all those clips that I've shown actually worked first time. But I never did a demo for James Bond, never did one for Titanic, never did one for Monty Python, never did one for Tina Turner, never did one for Rod Stewart or Diana Ross or any of the people I wrote for. George Michael, just straight in and did it, you know. So it's interesting because that trust was there. And I think that's eroded a bit these days because it's so easy to make demos and have focus groups and, you know, a number of voices. And a lot of composers, I think, are very confused because they're getting, in the way I did with RKO 281, they're getting voices from all directions. Do this, do that. I think you should do this. I've got this piece of music. I've got a brother-in-law who's got a studio in his bedroom. You know, you get all that. Which is why, I mean, to an extent, if I work now in film, I'm pretty clear about that I don't really want to do things that are going to involve that sort of headache. Just have a nice, clean run, which is why I've gone back to writing, you know, period music for films and conducting for other composers, which I did for a long time, and arranging. But Hans was the one who got me back into doing that. I hadn't done it for a few years.
You basically answered many questions I wanted to ask just right now, but when it happens that somebody says that this music doesn't work and it goes back to you, and then you have to do it again, what will you do? Will you try to fight for your case, for your piece by words, or will you just provide another score?
It really depends on the circumstance. If you actually can see what the reasoning is behind why somebody's not happy with what's happened, if you understand that, then you can rewrite it. If you can't come to terms with what it is, then you're a bit stuck. I mean, when I was conducting for another composer, I won't name him, but there was a scene early in the film where the star of the film drives up to a mental hospital, and the director wanted portentous music that was going to tell you that something was going to happen. But it didn't happen till 45 minutes later in the film. And we did 14 versions of, that particular cue. And none of them worked. And because it wasn't my score, I didn't feel it was my place to say, do you know what? No music is what you need. And in fact, that's what they wound up with, no music. But in my own case, a good example, again, from RKO 281, I wrote a fugue, and it was another scene where Liev Schreiber gets angrier and angrier, and I started it very simple and then built it up, it was a string line and another one and another one, so it turned into a sort of fugue of anger, and the orchestra applauded. And I thought, as I went up to the control room, I thought, that's not a good sign. If the orchestra like it, it's not going to work. And Ridley was sitting in the control room, and he said, what would it sound like if you just played one note? Okay, well, I'll try that. And, my work of masterpiece is gone. We played one note, and it worked. And that's what went in the film. And I still won an Emmy, so go figure,
On one note.
On one note. But any others?
Is there any film that you wish you had done, that you turned down? I mean, or maybe...
Well, funnily enough, I wrote my, inverted commas, autobiography a couple of years ago, which I have copies here. If anyone's interested, please. No, it's nice. I mean, the nice thing about the book is that I got forewords from Quincy Jones, bless him, Hans Zimmer, Jeff Goldblum, Michael Palin, Terry Gilliam, John Batiste, and Joss Stone, and Jim Carter from Downton Abbey. They all wrote a nice foreword for me. But what I was going to say was on RKO, as a case in point, I've now forgotten the question. So,
if there's anything that you wish...
What did I wish? Yeah, no, I know, yes. I did a chapter on, the ones that got away, if you like. Some of which I'm still not quite sure why I didn't get them, because I went for long meetings and it was all enthusiasm. But I'd have enjoyed doing the Austin Powers films, which I was one of the last two, but I didn't get it, so, okay. But I never stopped to think about that, that there is a whole list that I put in the book, and when I put it in the book, I went, oh, God, that's a whole career, that I missed out on for one reason or another. But generally, I'm very happy with what I did, and I'm very lucky that, there are those three sequences that we've seen that everybody knows, the Monty Python, Bright Side of Life, James Bond, and Titanic. Most people are lucky to get one, and I've got three, so I'm quite pleased about that. And, I was never out of work, which is another thing, in this industry that you can't believe, or, it's hard to reconcile. I went to Hollywood working. My first movie, I won a BAFTA, and I was immediately headhunted to do a Hollywood film, which is, oh, okay. So, from that point of view, I never stopped to think about, well, I should have done, or I could have done that, or I turned that one down. There are a few things I turned down that I regret, because I really enjoyed the films.
Actually, I did an interview once with Denzel Washington, and I did ask him the same question, and he said that he has one regret in his career. He was approached about a project, and he thought that the film was too dark and it's not going to work. It's not going to be a good movie. It's not going to be successful because it was, once again, too dark. And that movie was Seven.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it happens to everybody.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I thoroughly recommend a book written by an old friend of mine who's passed away now, sadly. And I did this yesterday as well, but it's not my book. It's a book called Torn Music. And what it is, it's about rejected scores over the years. And apart from the incredible thing being that it's about John Barry having a score thrown out, Elmer Bernstein, Jerry Goldsmith, Henry Mancini, Michel Legrand. I mean, everyone that you think is at the pinnacle of film music have had scores tossed out, you know, and it goes into the story of how and why and what happened. I'm afraid to say I'm in there, but I got kicked off a film without writing a note and paid in full. So I think that was a good result.
That's a great deal, actually.
Yeah, I wish there were more of those.
Do you get to reuse the music that hasn't been used?
I say I never have, but I was hired to write a TV series in the UK, and the director, I'd never worked with the director, and he said, I need something romantic, wistful, sad, and I wrote an oboe theme in the minor key, you know, and he said, no, it's not romantic, it's not wistful, and I did it a few times, and eventually I thought he wants the comfort blanket of his other composer, who was a friend of mine, so I rang him and said, would you do this film? He said, he's already called me. I said, fine. I gave him something on the shelf, and he loved it. Anyway, I then went to Hollywood to do a movie, and the director said, I want something romantic, sad, wistful. I went, okay. Gave him the track, loved it, and I got to do it with a full orchestra while my friend had a synthesizer and a cello, you know. And then I watched the TV drama when it came on, and the music sounded identical to what I'd written. I couldn't see any difference whatsoever. So it was a comfort thing rather than a critical thing, you know. But
it did not go to waste. No, not at all.
But other things, I've been very lucky because I've not had things thrown out. Or, I mean, there are things I've written that I think, I might try and reuse it sometime. You know, when I did a commercial years ago for a daily paper, and it only ran for like 4 days. And I really liked the theme. And it was the British London Film Festival. And they commissioned me to write the score for a 100-minute silent movie from the 1920s. And I reused that theme. It was very hard because when you're writing 100 minutes of music, you write 20 minutes and think, I've really achieved something, and there's 80 to go. It's, no, there's 3,500 bars, but we did it live in the London Film Festival with an orchestra at the Odeon, Leicester Square. It was a wonderful experience.
Is there a score that you're jealous of? Something that did you hear something, a movie score or whatever, and think, oh my God, how did I not come up with this one? It's so simple, it's so beautiful.
It's not so much that, it's hearing scores by people and really admiring them. Not thinking I could have done that or I should have done that. Particularly classic ones from the 30s, 40s, like Miklos Rozsa and Eric Korngold and Max Steiner, composers like that. Also, I'm very lucky to have worked as Elmer Bernstein's arranger. And to me, he's one of the great film composers of all time. So to be at his feet, inverted commas, you know, and doing things for him. And he was very supportive of my career, which was wonderful.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Yep.
You're going to get a microphone from behind you, yeah.
Like, how would you compare the process of, like, today, how composers compose today and back in the day? Because most of it today, it happens in one small studio with lots of computers and technology, while back in the day it included an orchestra and there was a big trust again from the director.
Oh, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. I mean, I feel like a dinosaur in a way because I only started using the computer notation program when I had to do the film I was just talking about, the 100-minute film, because I didn't have enough manuscript to write 100 minutes of music. But, I mean, I started using synthesizers as an adjunct to the orchestra many years ago when they really didn't sound particularly good. But the method now is, it's not something I'm comfortable with or I quite understand. So I sort of backed away from doing movies and TV, particularly TV. UK TV and American TV is mostly electronic because of the budget. And I always didn't like doing demos, not because I didn't like doing demos, because the sound was horrible, which it usually was. But to me, it was a waste of time, you know, that you would spend 15 hours putting something together, which you could have done with an orchestra in 3 minutes. You could have written it and recorded it. And I just always found, you know, the demo process was just, you know, wasting time. But then I guess I'm a dinosaur, you know, I didn't go with that.
Right. Like, would you, if I can add, like, would you write music by watching the picture? Or
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it varied. I mean, there are a number of films that are still out there and popular that were made by Film 4 in the UK. And they were mostly first-time directors, and the head of Film 4 would say to them, "You haven't got music, you need music." And I'd get a phone call, and it was literally 4 days. Can you write a score? And I would write a score, record it. The director had no involvement whatsoever because there wasn't time. And plonk, it was on the film. And in fact, one of the films had a 30th anniversary screening quite recently. And I met the director for the first time. I'd never met them before, 30 years later. And she was wonderful. I mean, she was, "Oh, I'm so happy to meet you, you know, what a great job." But we never met. It's extraordinary.
And one more question, I promise. Afterwards, when you do the score, do the editors and the director, they build the editing around your score, or the other way around?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had things. You have things that you write because, you know, once you've done it, it's not really your property anymore. So I've had things where the director said, "Oh, I took that piece you did here and I put it into this scene, but we had to extend the scene so that the music fitted," you know, but that's nothing to do with me. That's their choice. But quite often I was very lucky because I would be brought in at the script. And occasionally I'd suggest a line or a bit of business in a comedy, and they put it into the script. So that was I went to, I'd done some work with Michael Jackson, and I went to one of his concerts in the open air, and there was a policeman, a London policeman, at the back in uniform, and he was dancing, which is, you know, the music got to him. And the incredible thing was the helmet just stayed like that while he was sort of, and I just thought it was so funny. I was working on a movie. I went and told the director on the Monday, and he incorporated it straight into the film. So that's my bit of business in the film.
Thank you.
Okay, if we have no more questions. Okay. Give it up, please, for our very special guest, John Altman. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Nope.